Hello everyone and welcome back to another Thoughts Piece by me, your boy, Joe Van. Now, before we get started, I have a confession to make. I originally intended for this video to be something else entirely.
Hold up, wait a minute.
Not the way it's supposed to go.
You see, I am a man with many shortcomings, but like those who lose a sense, I like to think that I excel in other avenues. That was my muse, to make a video based on types of intelligence. I got the idea, felt my heart flutter, watched a smile grow across my face, then I sat down to do research on the subject, only to find that the 9 types of intelligence is a pseudoscience? Pseudoscience. The definition being an assertion of claims that a theory predicts something that it has not been shown to predict. What? This cannot be! It is such a popular thing across the modern world to say that we are of a higher intelligence in this way or that, but as it stands now, while unfalsifiable, the types of intelligence theory is cursed to sit in the purgatory of an unconfirmed, unsubstantiated, ungroup of peer-reviewed thing in the scientific community. It blew my mind because I thought I had a pretty good grasp on what was bogus. Maybe not in the social world, but at least in the science world, and it turns out I was wrong. So with this crushing sense of my original video idea put in the dirt, laid to rest in chaos, I cranked the cogs in my cranium to come up with something else, anything else to have made this implosion mean something. And what came out of it is today's video, the topic of pseudosciences. So sit back as I take you through, not all of them, but my personal picks for the most unusual, popular, and dangerous pseudosciences out there in today's Pseudosciences Iceberg. Let's start with this relatively harmless one. We all surely know how this one goes. It proposes that certain abilities aren't just abilities, they're types of intelligence. A dude, Howard Gardner, first published this theory in 1989 in his book Frames of Mind, and to this day he still fights for its right to exist. It first started with 8 forms of intelligence: musical, spatial, linguistic, logical, bodily, interpersonal, others, intrapersonal, self, and naturalistic. He later added existential, at first not wanting to add spirituality as an intelligence, burn, but settled with calling it existential. And wouldn't you know it, his greed for more categories is yet to be quenched. In 2016, he considered adding teaching as its own form of intelligence, while in the same interview he explicitly refused fan suggestions like humor, cooking, and sexual intelligence. Dude's so flat-skulled he can't even see these things as the kings and queens of intelligences that they are. Some other dude named Nan later came in to argue that based on Gardner's theory of MI, that digital intelligence should be added to his list, stating it as a meta-intelligence to use other intelligences with great effect. You know, like a streamer using his chat to find something out.
What is Dan doing now? I know he's fired from Nickelodeon, but what is he currently doing? Does anyone know off the top of your head? I can look it up, but I'd rather just see chat's fan theories, I guess.
Okay. So now that we have a grasp on just what the hell this theory is, it's time to break Gardner's heart like he broke mine. There is actually evidence in cognitive neuroscience research to the contrary, written about in a 2006 article by Lynn Underwaterhouse. I'll paraphrase this due to lengthiness. Taken together, the evidence for the intercorrelations of subscales of IQ measures, the evidence for a shared set of genes associated with mathematics, reading, language, music, motor skills, and emotions suggests that it is unlikely that each of Gardner's intelligence should operate via a different set of neural mechanisms. Equally important, evidence for the what is it and where is it to decision-making systems suggests that these mental faculties have evolved to address very specific problems in our environment. Because Gardner claimed that the intelligences are innate potentialities related to a general content area, MI theory lacks a rationale for the phylogenetic emergence of the intelligences. Bing bang boom, it's pseudoscience. Not a fact of the world, but also completely harmless. Finally, it's time for the real kicker. By 2000, 6 years earlier, after multiple papers came out revealing a lack of evidence for MI, Gardner and his buddy Connell conceded that there was, quote, little hard evidence for MI theory. And in 2004, Gardner asserted that he would be, quote, delighted were such evidence to accrue. So you straight up folded in 2004, yet you're going off in 2016 like you never did? Okay, on to the other ones. I'll be quicker, I swear. I'll be honest. Listen. I was only 19, and that movie, it looked so realistic. And I was watching Spirit and Science videos at the time. I didn't know any better, alright? Back in December of 2012, on the eve of the 21st, I sat with a friend of mine in his car in our old school's parking lot, counting down the minutes, waiting for some kind of giant global magnetic pole-flipping EMP to go off. Our plan was to immediately steal horses from the nearest ranch, which was admittedly several kilometers away, so we didn't really plan it all that well. But we would jack them, no uncle required, and loot stores as quickly as we could, then living in the brush for the foreseeable future. But you know what happened when midnight struck? Bing, buck, hot luck, dumb fuck, nothing. Between the two of us, I was the one hyping this thing up like an end of high school house party in my place, thinking that all the popular kids would go. But wouldn't you know it, reality was, well, more in touch with itself than I was, and no such luck came our way. Anecdote aside, the unsubstantiated theory went as such, that a loose range of cataclysmic or otherwise transformative events would occur on or around the 21st of December 2012. But here's the thing, who exactly was claiming this? The Mayans? Oh wait, they can't. This date simply acknowledged the end of a 5,126 year-long cycle in the Mesoamerican long count calendar, a part of the Maya civilization that was decimated by the Spanish colonists in 1697. Countries that were part of the Maya civilization, now Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, held festivities to commemorate the occasion, casually, like it was always meant to be. Professional Mayanist scholars stated that no extant classic Maya accounts forecast impending doom, and that the idea that the long count calendar ended in 2012 misrepresented the Maya history and culture.
Mission failed.
Just a dogpile for the sake of it, astronomers rejected the various proposed doomsday scenarios easily by elementary astronomical observations. Nothing in the core or the sky predicted that anything cataclysmic would happen. That was Harambe's job. Moving on. It's time for us to make our way into the subnautical depths of the pseudoscience world. It'll begin to get dangerous, so before we go, it's time for some Honourable Mentions! These duds have been covered to death by others across YouTube and the internet at large, and are widely harmless to its believers, minus the damage done through social alienating. So I'm just gonna run through them like a college football team runs. You know what? No, I'm not touching that joke. That shit's fucked sideways like an Alabama house on Thanksgiving. Okay, honorable mentions include ancient astronauts, a concept based on the belief that intelligent extraterrestrial beings visited Earth and made contact with humans in prehistoric times. Astrology, the claim that there's a direct relationship between space stuff and our personalities. Lunar effect on human behavior, like diet astrology, and one I kinda believed in, that nights with full moons caused heightened aggression and thus higher crime rates. Flat earthers, claiming to have flat skulls. Hollow earthers, claiming to have hollow skulls. Moon landing conspirators, claiming that since they weren't there, it didn't happen. The Bermuda Triangle, confusing aircraft failures and shipwrecks that took place in different areas to have all happened in one tight region, caused by Gulf Stream and submarine volcanoes. Other paranormal triangles exist like Japan's Dragon's Triangle, also caused by submarine volcanoes. Free energy, a class of perpetual motion that purports to be able to create energy. We all know energy can't be created or destroyed, just transformed. Right guys? Right? Water-fueled cars, another one I believed in. An instance of perpetual motion machines. Such devices are claimed to use water as fuel or extracted hydrogen from water with no other energy input. Many such claims are part of investment frauds. Acupuncture, the use of fine-ass needles to stimulate acupuncture points and balance the flow of qi. I personally would prefer less painful placebos, like pills perhaps. Adrenal fatigue. It is a pseudoscientific diagnosis described as a state in which the adrenal glands are exhausted and unable to produce adequate quantities of hormones due to chronic stress or infections. Adrenal fatigue should not be confused with actual forms of adrenal dysfunction such as adrenal insufficiency. The entire set of beliefs in the paranormal and ufology, numerology, religion.
What the dog doing?
Jesus Christ! Bill! Oh my god. This is crazy. This is crazy.
This video is to get you guys hopefully back on track.
Well, let's not fight. It's not nice to fight.
Oh, yeah, you're right, Bailey.
Okay. All right, now let's see, where were we? Oh, yes.
The Honourable Mentions section.
Anyhow.
The aquatic ape hypothesis, morphic resonance,
Baba Booey.
time cube,
What the dog doing?
and the torsion field. All of these will be linked in the description. And sadly, unilineal evolution, a model theory that incorporates civilizational enlightenment and evolutionary social progress. The idea that we can become better, just inherently, over time. But unfortunately, that too is a pseudoscience. There is nothing to suggest that evolution will ever rid us of our ugliest parts of psychology, such as tribalism and general tendencies toward violence. Alrighty yo, so no more delaying the deep depths that await us down below. Here we go! Come on down and snag a seat next to Walt Disney or the real Mark Zuckerberg. Cryonics is a field of products, techniques, and beliefs supporting the idea that freezing the clinically dead at very low temperatures, typically below -196 degrees Celsius, will enable future revival or resubstantiation. These beliefs often hinge on the existence of advanced humans or alien societies in the distant future who will possess as of yet unknown technology for the stabilization of dying cells. However, there is no evidence a human being can be revived after such freezing, and no solid scientific evidence suggesting that reanimation will ever even be possible in the future. At that temperature, you are no longer a mere suspended corpse. You're an old slab of steak forgotten in the back with freezer burn. The cells aren't suspended. They're dead. Long dead. The biggest potential danger that this practice houses, aside from the monetary loss of the clientele, is the prospect of individuals voluntarily euthanizing themselves to undergo the procedure. While it hasn't happened yet, at least not recorded, cryonics houses a real risk depending on the laws of prospective countries. I say save all that wasted money for your family, or better yet, give it to charity.
You ever date a homeless guy?
No.
After the date, you can drop me off anywhere.
As far as coming back, you'd have better luck making it just by recording as much of your life as possible. That way an AI can recompile it into a test tube with one of your hairs for DNA. Sure, it wouldn't really be you, but the self is an illusion anyway, you egomaniac. Moving on. It's a form of alternative medicine mostly concerned with the diagnosis and treatment of mechanical disorders of the spine. Some proponents, especially those in the field's early history, have claimed that such disorders affect general health via the nervous system through something called vertebral subluxation, a BS term which is not based on scientific evidence. The main chiropractic treatment technique involves manual therapy, especially spinal manipulation therapy, the manipulations of other joints and of soft tissues. Its foundation is at stark odds with mainstream medicine, sustained purely by pseudoscientific ideas such as the aforementioned vertebral subluxation and innate intelligence, concepts that blatantly reject science. Now, I can understand people who enjoy receiving this practice to say, hey, whatever, even if the dude wrestling me isn't basing his performance off of WWE's guideline code, why is this practice under the depths of this iceberg? I'll tell you why. Because of the amount of people it hurts. Literally just Google chiropractic fails and you'll get an endless supply of terrifying footage. I plead to anyone listening who goes to a chiropractic, move your business to a physiotherapist or massage therapist. They are people who at the very least went to school for medical studies. Do that or get into yoga. Okay, moving on. That's right. And no, we're not talking about prison showers. Colon therapy, also known as colon cleansing, colonic irrigation, or just enemas, is an old practice dating back to the 1880s in France. It all started with a coined term, auto-intoxication. The symptoms for this unproven hypothesis include headaches, fatigue, loss of appetite, and irritability. While these symptoms are real, they would most likely be caused by irritable bowel syndrome, rather than toxins from putrefying foods, which is what auto-intoxication claims. The benefits to this practice are vague and anecdotal, with the claims made by manufacturers and practitioners based on a flawed understanding of the body. There's little evidence of actual benefit to this procedure, and no evidence that it can alleviate the symptoms that are attributed to it. As the colon normally expels waste, colon cleansing is almost never needed. This fun act of colonic irrigation can disrupt the bowel's normal flora, and, if done frequently, can result in electrolyte depletion with dehydration. Rare but severe adverse effects have included rectal perforation, as well as amoebic infection from poorly sterilized equipment. Others claim that colon cleansing may impede the colon's shedding of dead cells. Excessive use of these enemas have also been associated with heart problems such as heart failure, as well as heart attacks related to electrolyte imbalances, especially when performed as a specific type called a coffee enema. You heard that right. Move over, butt chugging, because coffee's got a main stage now, and apparently it has for hundreds of years, with devastatingly deadly effect. One of the worst parts about frequent enemas and other colon cleansing tools is it may lead to a dependence on it. It can actually lead to frequent clients having the inability to defecate without assistance, as well as potential withdrawal symptoms. In closing, a medical doctor, Harriet Hall, specifically wrote on the topic, saying, quote, "The colon cleanses itself. The idea that its walls are coated with years-old hamburger residue is preposterous. Nail, meat coffin." Moving on. And we've made it to our final descent. You might think that death should be considered the worst thing a pseudoscience can do to someone, but I would argue that while of course to be duped into a deadly practice is about as blatant of a danger as things can get, for the sake of this iceberg, I propose that emotional and psychological abuse towards people, and especially to children, is one of, if not the darkest and most evil this iceberg can go. This aspect about humanity, our capacity to not only ruin someone's life, but to do it with deliberate attacks towards their psyche, is to me the true idea of evil. That would include sexual attacks and murder, but the other practices like chiropractic and colon cleansing aren't as deliberate as these practices I'm about to go over. So, without further ado. Coding is a catch-all term for various Russian alternative therapeutic methods used to treat addictions, in which the therapist attempts to scare patients into abstinence from a substance they are addicted to by convincing them that they will be harmed or killed if they use it again. Each method involves the therapist pretending to insert a, quote, code into patients' brains that will ostensibly provoke a strong adverse reaction should they come into contact with the addictive substance.
What the dog doing?
These methods use a combination of theatrics, hypnosis, placebos, and drugs with temporary adverse effects to instill the erroneous beliefs. Therapists may pretend to, quote, code patients for a fixed length of time, such as 5 years. There isn't much to say about this other than there are so many other immensely more ethical ways to help people with addiction. You don't have to trick them into the fear of death to help them. Even if they end up quitting the substance they were on, the end doesn't justify the means here, because the whole thing was based on a lie that they could later discover and devolve back into their addiction. And aside from that idea, there's just the basic fact that you have replaced one torment in their life with another. Next.
What's your name? What? What's your name?
Conversion therapy.
Fuck you!
Conversion therapy.
Sometimes called reparative therapy, conversion therapy seeks to change a non-heterosexual person's sexual orientation so that they will no longer be homosexual or bisexual. The American Psychiatric Association defines reparative therapy as psychiatric treatment which is based upon the assumption that homosexuality per se is a mental disorder, or based upon the priori assumption that a patient should change their homosexual orientation. This is on its face evil and fear-driven. Why the fuck is it even now, in our current technological and scientific day and age, we still do not have a completely unified basic societal understanding that sexual orientation goes in every direction? And why is it feared and discriminated against through religion specifically? How are people so dense as to say that God is love, but not that kind of love. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that 2 or more consenting adults loving each other is not a danger. Honestly, fuck these people. And finally, despite the practice's name, it is not based on traditional attachment theory and shares no principles of mainstream developmental psychological research. Attachment therapy is the one common name for a set of potentially fatal clinical interventions and parenting techniques aimed at controlling aggressive, disobedient, or unaffectionate children using, quote, restraint and physical and psychological abuse to seek their desired results. The term is clearly supposed to be intentionally confused with attachment theory to garner further credibility that it would otherwise get, especially outside the US where the pseudoscientific therapy is less known. For context, attachment theory is a psychological, evolutionary, and ethological theory concerning relationships between humans. The most important tenet is that young children need to develop a relationship with at least one primary caregiver for normal social and emotional development. Back to the shitty practice, probably the most common form performed is holding therapy, in which a child is restrained by adults for the purpose of supposed cathartic release of suppressed rage and regression. Perhaps the most extreme, but much less common practice is rebirthing, in which the child is wrapped tightly in a blanket and then made to simulate emergence from a birth canal. This is done by encouraging the child to struggle while the adults push and squeeze the child to mimic contractions. In 2006, it was the subject of an almost entirely critical task force report commissioned by the American Professional Society on the Abuse of Children. Though, while it is formally condemned, that does not stop its followers of the dark arts to seek out and encourage its practices live on with tired parents just wanting a break from their child. The practice is abhorrent and the worst that humanity has to offer, besides the likes of those who commit blatant atrocities. The difference, again, being that this totes itself as something official that people should accept in society. Oh, and there, page done, book closed. Jesus Christ, I need a shower. Well, hey, before I leave, I want to thank you guys for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into pseudosciences. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to catch more Jovan goodness. And until next time, I wish you nothing but love in your life and ask you to remember to keep on thinking. Ciao for now. Peace.